Yeah, I'm just about to go live, baby. I'm just about to hit the live button. You just missed it. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. Hello, everybody. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Please tell me you can see me. Please tell me you can hear me. No guitar today. I'm just waiting for you to respond and let me know that I'm coming through to you. The software would suggest that I am. I'm going to keep turning up the mic volume until it hits the red. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. That'll do. That's too far. See you in here. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, everybody. I was going to be talking to Jerry McAvoy this evening, but something's come up and we're going to have to postpone it until next week. But that's all right. It will happen. So, as I discussed the other day, I did a review of my albums, like looking back over my albums, and I did it when I was new to streaming, and I didn't understand certain things about what was going to be necessary and what was needed, and I just thought to myself, well, you know, just log on to the Wi-Fi on in a hotel and just stream from there, and well, it was a catastrophe. There was about 2 seconds between my mouth moving and the sound being heard. So because Jerry's had to postpone due to something going on, he's gigging, I believe. I thought, well, now that I have this nice environment with better sound and better picture and all of that, I'll redo the story of my albums. So I hope you'll be interested to hear that. All of these albums are available on Spotify and iTunes, and they're also available on CD from me if you want to contact me, and I can sell you a CD if you want to buy one. So here we go. This this first album was called Homework, and it looks like this. Yes, indeed. And that's me, believe it or not. My arms look like, my wrists look like, you know, if I was that slim, I'm always talking about losing weight as an older fella, but I'll tell you what, if I was that slim these days, people would be asking us how much time I've got left. Squire Strat, Demars, Seymour Duncan pick up in the bridge. That picture was taken at the Newcastle Playhouse Bar, photograph taken by Simon Donald, artwork cover done by Simon Donald, Tim Johnson on drums and Fish Armstrong on the bass. You can't see Tim or Fish in that shot, but they were my rhythm section for a long time. Great guys, great players, excellent players. And so basically I recorded this album at home, and I kind of envisaged, this is the beginning of it all, right? This was the beginning of the whole thing of me being a solo artist, so to speak. I did these tracks. I had a Porter studio, and which I'd borrowed, and I did these tracks, and they got circulated within the music industry, and they got into certain people's hands, and people reviewed them and spoke very highly of them. Some big record companies. Island Records being one of them, and EMI being another one, and kind of tried to push for a record deal, and it wasn't happening, it wasn't forthcoming. So I put that album out independently and called it Homework, and it was we pressed 250 copies, and we sold them all. They all went, and it was well received. And I'm not playing any music. I'm not going to be playing any music off these albums, because it's too much technicality, because I didn't realize I was going to be doing this show tonight, so I haven't had time to prepare. And so Yeah, so that was the first solo album that I ever did. The next solo album that I did, there was a 10-year gap. There was a 10-year gap. Hello there from Polski. I will translate that later on. I'll translate that later on. The next solo album I did was this. Once again, the photography on the cover was done by Simon Donald, as were the graphics. Simon's a great graphics guy, actually. And that is the guitar that Rory Gallagher gave me in the Fender sponsored competition. And these kind of up-close shots of the guitar are something that I've really liked ever since, and I thought it was a great concept that Simon came up with, and I've taken a lot of photographs like this ever since. Okay, so from releasing Homework to this album, there was more or less a 10-year gap, because I was out running wild with drink. John Reed, I've got your Telecaster. That used to be my Telecaster. Nice to see you, John. Oh yes, thank you very much. Somebody else said that today. I think I'm going to end up at the BBC, you know, because that's just the way it is. So anybody at the BBC wants to call me up, I'll read the news. I'll read out any propaganda you want. Hello from South Shields, Ralph George. Nice to hear from you, Ralph. So this is Paul Rose propaganda. This is the world as I see it. Slide Away. Yes. So this album is a bit of a hodgepodge, as was Homework. I wasn't really into the swing of things when I did this album. So, like the first track. Hi, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The first track is called Addiction. The second track, or the third track, is called Old Strings. And Addiction is like a fusion experiment in time signatures and craziness. And Old Strings is like a Chet Atkins country picking, and it's like that they couldn't be further apart. I suppose it makes it for interesting listening, but the idea of as a record company would want an album to have continuity and you know, I understand why. It all needs to sound like one piece of work rather than what these first few albums actually were, which is just stuff pulled in left, right and centre. So like Addiction, this is the truth, I'll tell you the absolute truth. The track Addiction, the first track, I recorded it in the attic of a house in Kentish Town in North London. Maybe the person who owns that house is tuning in. Hello if you are. I'll never forget you. And I recorded this track in the attic, and there was a friend of mine who was coming off heroin from another part of London, who'd come to stay with us in this house to get away from the heroin. And he was lying on the spare bed, which was in the corner, when I was putting this lead guitar down. And he was literally climbing the wall with the withdrawals from heroin. So if you listen, that's the absolute truth. That's 100% true. So if you want to go to Spotify or iTunes and listen to this track, hopefully buy it. I'm not here to sell you stuff. Well, I am, but I'm not. And you listen to that track Addiction, it's the absolute truth that this guy was coming off heroin and he was literally climbing the wall. Yes, absolutely. Okay, let me catch up on these messages. Hello from South Shields, hello from Poland. That's the Michael Jackson telly, correct. Man, you got it back from me the night he died. He'd be 60 this month. Yeah, John, anybody who's reading these messages from John, he bought my 62 reissue telly off me, the Sunburst one with the cream outline, and I had a terrible regret, and I called John up and he sold the guitar back to me. Luciana Blues from Brazil, hello there, nice to hear from you. So we got Glasgow, we got London, we got Brazil, we got the full Monty. That's fantastic. So anyway, that was Slide Away, and I entered when I stopped drinking. I had a thing going on with alcohol. As anybody who knows us a long time will know, and it's no big deal. It's 23 and a half years ago. I've finished with it. But when I stopped drinking, I had that track addiction, and I entered Guitarist of the Year magazine's Guitarist of the Year competition, and I won it. And I was really excited by that, and I got a feature in Guitarist magazine, and I was very immature and didn't quite know how to deal with it. But Guitarist magazine did a CD feature on the front of Guitarist magazine, and they said, we're going to put a track on of your choice as the winner, and they got Addiction, and they put it on the front cover of Guitarist magazine, and I was absolutely thrilled to bits. And then later on, it ended up on this album, Slide Away. And there's a lot of kind of ambient, experimental, meditative kind of stuff. You have all my friends I have all my friends CDs. I love your music. Thank you very much, Lucia. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name, so I hope I'm not saying it completely wrong. So that was Slide Away. The album that came, that's me, right? The album that came after Slide Away was an album called Magic City. Now, this album I recorded as I did with the second half of Slide Away, and all of Magic City I recorded living in a flat on Abbey Road in London. Literally a 10-minute walk from Abbey Road Studios. And that's the front cover. The photograph of the front cover was done by James Emmett, who was a friend of mine, and the artwork and the graphics once again was done by Simon Donald. That is me, believe it or not. And that is the projection room of the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square in London. And this was really I was kind of moving forward with me solo work with this, and I was spending time in Baltimore, Maryland at the time when this was being released, and I'd just finished it. And it was one afternoon I was in the flat in London and in Abbey Road, and The Sound of Music came on the TV, and I was listening to My Favourite Things, and I thought, oh, that would be a great cover version. So I went about doing a cover version of My Favourite Things, and when I bumped into James, just as a pal of mine, I said, why don't we do some? He says, I'm working in the Prince Charles Cinema. I'm the projectionist there, and I went to the cinema, and we took some photographs of me just kind of sitting in the projection room, and we played the album through the speaker system of the cinema. So as all these people are coming in to see the movie, they're listening to my music. And the interesting thing is, as coincidence would have it, that film on the projector there is The Sound of Music. That was the film that was being played that afternoon. What an extraordinary coincidence. You can't plan for these things. That just kind of happen. This album here, this next album, is called Live at the Broken Doll. And yes, that's me. And that's Fish, the bass player, with his fretless jazz bass, 1960s fretless jazz bass. Tim playing the drums, but you can't see him. And that photograph was not taken at the Broken Doll. That photograph was taken at a nightclub in Newcastle called Walkers, where it was the 30th anniversary of Marshall Amps, and Marshall were doing like a road show, and for the Newcastle thing, we were invited to be the band, and that's where that photograph's from. But the Live at the Broken Doll album is a bootleg recorded on a cassette player at the back of the room. It was a completely mental night. Everything was on full volume, and I took like the best 5 tracks out of what was about an hour and 15 minutes. I took the best 25-30 minutes and I stuck it on a CD. that album is well out of press. That's long gone. But you know, it's available if anybody wants it. It can be made available. But I was 24. I was mad. Obviously, it was released after I'd stopped drinking. But when it was recorded, it was very much that lunatic that I once was. The next album, this is called Late Show, and this album is an obscure one. It was kind of it was released by an independent label called High Note, who a friend of mine put me in touch with. Yes, tell us all where you're from. And I don't know how many people are watching, but so this was like I don't know, at the time when I was in Abbey Road, I was recording. I'm always recording music, and I kind of had some leftovers from Magic City and Slide Away, and they weren't leftovers because I didn't like the tracks under any circumstances. I just kind of couldn't make them fit into the album, because now, like I'm saying about Homework and Slide Away, I was just chucking everything together. If it was good, it would get a spot, and whether or not it was coherent and ran like a story, I didn't really take any notice of that. But so now I've got these tracks which are leftovers from Late Show because I'm seeing them as not being a part of the project, you know. Montreal, Canada. Thank you very much indeed. I love this international thing, I really do. So Late Show again is a very ambient thing. I'd stopped drinking and I'd stopped smoking weed, and I'd changed things dramatically, and this new kind of attitude in me was beginning to emerge, and I was making this ambient kind of soundscape music. And Late Show is a good one. You know, I like them all. Speaking of ambient, laid-back albums, this is not an ambient, laid-back album. This is Half Alive, as the title would suggest. It's a half live, half studio album. It was made. The studio tracks were recorded in the drummer's house, Richard Newman, in his garage studio. Powerhouse drummer. We did All Along the Watchtower in there. There's a version of All Along the Watchtower in there that people liked. People went mad for. I know people had them. I'll tell you, of those of you who know who Bootsy Collins is, the funk bass player from Parliament and all of those different bands, this is the truth. You might not believe it. Bootsy's manager had my version of All Along the Watchtower on his answer phone for 2 years. So when people called up to do business with Bootsy Collins, they heard our version of All Along the Watchtower for 2 years. And the fella's called Ron Brembry. He's managed Bootsy for, at that time, he'd managed Bootsy for 32 years. So, I mean, that's getting on. God, I don't know. That's, you know, he's managed Bootsy for his entire career. So anytime anybody rang up to do business with Bootsy, they heard the Paul Rose bands All Along the Watchtower. Aye, it is. It's it was done, and the live tracks were done at the right up in the Highlands. Somebody maybe be able to remind me of the name of the venue. East Grange Loft, the East Grange Loft, and it was near a town called Elgin. I think it was Elgin. Maybe somebody can remind me, but that was an album that kind of got us loads of work around the British blues rock scene. And thank you very much, Stephanie. It is. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. I've learned a lot about mixing since then. There's a lot of fluffs in the mixing that I would do differently now. So yeah, that was Half Alive. So the next one, Promises. Now then, first of all, that is Southend Pier. And I took that picture on a Sunday morning. I was gigging down there, and I'd walked all the way down to the end of the pier, had fish and chips or bacon and egg or something like that, and a morning cup of tea. Whoops a daisy. And as I was walking back, I looked back down the pier and I thought, oh, that's great. So I took a photograph, and that's what became the album cover. And it was a beautiful Sunday morning. And I call it Promises because of despondency with the music industry. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It goes on all the time, people telling you what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, and then it doesn't come to fruition, you know. Some stuff does come to fruition, but often it doesn't. What do you think, Charlie Rose? You know, you've been seen in Canada and America and Glasgow and London and Brazil. Do you know that? Do you care? You're an international celebrity. Ottawa. Hello there. Hello in Ottawa. You've been seen. Go to sleep then. Go on then. Turn your back on us. Trying to make you famous. Yes, so Promises. And this Promises was like... Promises was a big step forward for me, and I'm not kind of talking about my experience and my learning and my knowledge of making albums and producing and recording and mixing and composing was kind of moving forward, and I was getting better software, and I was getting better hardware and better audio interfaces, and so this album was like the beginning of it was another era, and I was getting into more sophisticated arrangements and productions, and I was kind of challenging myself more and more to push for bigger sounds, not more clever sounds, but just bigger production, more instruments, more bigger picture, you know. Promises, yeah. Promises. I was going to call it Promises. I had an idea to release 2 albums. One was going to be called Promises, and the other one was going to be called Excuses. For obvious reasons, you know, you get all these promises made, and then you get all the excuses for why it's not happening. But I just ended up, you know, breaking it down into one and calling it Promises. The next album after that was this one, The Learning Curve. And the reason that this album is called The Learning Curve is quite simply, it's an acoustic album, and I had I'd bought this acoustic guitar. There's a friend of mine called Paul Pringle, who's a great singer-songwriter, good musician and friend, and we were doing some recording in my flat in Abbey Road. This Learning Curve album was recorded. This Learning Curve album was recorded a long time after this time, but Paul said to me when we were recording his songs, he was kind of using me to record and produce his songs, and he said to me, he says, I can't believe you haven't got an acoustic guitar. And it kind of stuck with me, you know. It kind of stuck with me, that comment. And I walked into a shop, and there was this acoustic guitar hanging on the wall. This one, this very acoustic guitar, an Avalon. And I bought it. It was an beautiful dog. Yeah. You see, you're getting all the attention. He's even got his picture on the wall. Did you notice the picture on the wall, ladies and gentlemen? You trouble, you cause nothing but trouble. So I bought this acoustic guitar, and I bought a microphone, a good microphone, because I wasn't really doing that much singing at the time, if I remember rightly. I can't remember what microphone I would have been using, but anyway, I bought a Rode NT1 microphone, which is a really good microphone for the money, and I bought this acoustic guitar, and I started recording just anything, you know, just kind of ideas and oh shite, I'm spilling tea everywhere. It's just a dog by Mo Pitney. Right, I will. Excuse me, folks, I just poured tea all the way down myself. I do it on a regular basis. It's important to say that pretty much I've never kind of sat there and said to myself, right, time to make an album. What I'm doing is that I'm just writing and recording whenever it takes me. Whenever I feel inspired or I've got an idea, I'll record stuff and I'll write stuff and I'll record as I'm writing and all of this, you know, and then I suddenly find that, you know, I've got an album's worth of material. If I've got 15 or 16 tracks that I like, I'll think I'll put them on an album, or I did. That's how it used to work. I have made some albums where I've said, right, I'm going to make an album today. You know, I'm going to get up and I'm going to make 12 tracks and I'm going to make it an album. And it's extremely stressful to put that on your own shoulders, you know. What I've found works best for me is just to write and record until I have enough material for an album, and then the concept takes shape. Now, this isn't an album, but I will mention it. The Rock and Blues tutorial DVD I did at this time. This is an hour and a half, 2 hour guitar lesson on DVD, which was another product. This is like before YouTube had kind of, you know, things. I think MySpace was the big thing at the time. YouTube was just getting started. Facebook was unheard of, and I'm preparing, for those of you who might be interested, just as a little interjection here, I'm preparing some online lessons that you can subscribe to. You can have personal one-to-one lessons, and you know, because, you know, I'm in the process of setting that up, and I hope to launch my online teaching school in the next couple of weeks. Also, we're going to do a teaching school down in the south of France as well. We'll hopefully get one of those in before the end of the next few months. We'll announce that later, all the details. But that's my blues and rock tutorial DVD, and that, John Reid, is the Michael Jackson Telecaster, which I managed to get back off you. Thank the Lord. Thank you, John Reid. So the next album, Note to Self. My favourite, actually. My favourite album. The title Note to Self is it kind of chronicles my musical heritage, for the want of a better word, my musical history. There's a Shadows cover version on there. There's a cover version of the Get Carter theme with, you know, the Michael Jackson movie when he comes up to Michael Jackson! You got me stuck on Michael Jackson. Michael Caine. Michael Caine comes to Newcastle as a gangster to avenge his brother's death. Great film. And Ian Gardner, nice to see you, Ian. And that's kind of my favourite one of the lot, I think. I think I kind of reached the peak of me working alone, you know, like programming drums and doing everything myself. I think, you know, I kind of reached the peak of that with this Note to Self album, and I like the way the artwork and the photography, everything sort of just, for me, I'm not saying it's better or worse, but for me, this album was where I'd really kind of found me stride, you know. I'd really found me stride. Yeah, and I like Note to Self, but I am kind of proud of all of them. The amount of work that I put into these albums, the amount of time, combing through the ideas, combing through the mixes, combing through the material, combing through the running order, combing through everything, you know. Like thinking of one song and the next song is like a chord change, you know, that goes with that, or that goes with that, and kind of moving things around so that it runs continuously. So like I said at the beginning, Homework and Slide Away were like a hodgepodge. I'm not saying they're bad, because I don't think they are bad. I think they're primitive and I think they're naive, but the music's sincere. But as far as as far as a concept goes, it's well, I guess the mayhem and the lack of organisation and the selection of material and the running order of the tracks is the concept, you know. 10. The Michael Jackson Telecaster strikes again with the Seymour Duncan pickups. I bought that guitar from, it was either Wildwood Guitars or Dave's Guitars, or I can't remember the other store. There was 3 stores in North America who were commissioning Fender to make batches solely made available in those specific stores. And I bought that guitar when the dollar, it was like $1.97 to the pound. So I think I paid about, well, I appreciate you saying that, Stephanie. I certainly worked hard on it. This has got a selection. Now, okay, this is like live drums, you know. There's no programmed drums on this. This is live drums, and there's 3 drummers on this album. There is George Martinez, there is Dave Scott, and there's Ted McKenna. And George Martinez and Dave Scott were recorded in Miami. I was on holiday in New York, and I was playing a Strat in New York City, and I was talking to the guy who worked in the store, and he took like my email address, and I sent him all along the Watchtower. You know, just been, I sent him some stuff. He's listening to me play, and he says, "Oh, you know, send us some stuff." And he sent it to this producer down in Miami, a guy called Kemper. Let me come back to that. So this producer emailed me from Miami, and he said, "I've got a studio and I record all the time, and if you want to come and make an album, come over, we'll take care of things." And so I bought a flight to Miami, and Steve Gordon, this producer was called, producer and mixer, and he organised a couple of drummers, and we did Walker Road, and we did Harlem Nocturne, and we did a few things, and there's a version of Little Wing on there with Ted McKenna playing drums from the Kemper amp. I've never tried the Kemper amp, Tom, I've never tried the Kemper amp, but I'm aware, I know the name, and it must be good because people are talking highly about them. So that was 10, and the reason the album was called 10, it was the 10th album. It was released in 2010. I released it purposefully in October, which is the 10th month. It's got 10 tracks on it, and the 10th track is called 10. So there's a whole lot of 10s going on there, ladies and gentlemen. There's a whole lot of 10s going on in the 10 album. And so this next one here is the best of. Okay, kind of call it the best of for a joke, because Du ist, are you speaking German to me at this point in time? Okay, so the best of. That's a German guitar, by the way. That's a German guitar, a Framus guitar, which was custom made for me by the company. Best of, self-explanatory. As all of these albums were building up, you know, I mean, we're talking about, this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 albums now, carrying all of these. Do it, yeah, I will. Du ist, okay, ich verstehen. Ich verstehen Sie. You know, rather than dragging boxes and boxes and boxes of albums on and off planes and having huge suitcases weighed down with CDs, I did this best of, you know, and I call it the best of kind of as a joke, you know, like a greatest hits, when I've never actually had any hits at all. Yeah, so that was that. What came next was an album which I'm very proud of, which as yet has not yet been pressed to CD. Switzerland, Swiss made. Okay, I will have a look. So White Mountain Road. This album features Ted McKenna on drums, Kenny Hutchison on bass, Bill Evans on tenor sax from Miles Davis's band, now in my band, and Randy Brecker on trumpet. And this album, the backing tracks for this album were recorded in a friend's house in Northern Ireland, in a kind of a, I don't know, a converted barn. Absolutely fantastic ambience, a great place to make music. Such a shame we allowed a guy to come in and be a manager, and he just destroyed everything. He destroyed the business and he destroyed friendships, and it really is such a shame, because we could have done so much better than what he ended up doing. Flushed fortunes down the drain with lies and backstabbing, you know, got nobody anywhere. But White Mountain Road is one of my favourites. It was a lot of work, you know. We loaded all of my gear into the car and we drove over to Northern Ireland and we set up, and it was a lot of work, and I was kind of starting to build relationships in New York at the time, which is how, you know, I met Bill Evans, who Bill Evans played in well, it is available to buy, Stephanie, but not on CD yet. I'm trying to raise the funds to press it onto CD, and I assure you, the moment I do, I need some investment, basically. Being a rock and roll star, there's no money in it. There's no money in it, Chuck. But I was beginning to make inroads into New York, and I was jamming with Bill Evans. And like I said, Bill Evans was playing sax with Miles Davis. I think he did 6 albums in the Miles Davis group, which is like the top of the tree. It's the top of the tree, you know. Miles Davis, come on. If you're playing tenor sax with Miles Davis, you can play a bit. And so he played saxophone on this album. He played 3 solos, and I wanted a trumpet solo as well. And I said to Bill Evans, would you contact Randy Brecker on our behalf and see if he would be interested in putting some trumpet down on this album? And he did. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is one of the proudest moments of my entire musical career, having Randy Brecker play on my album, because I used to listen to the Brecker Brothers. I still listen to the Brecker Brothers. Heavy metal bebop, holy moly, what an album. And yeah, so what happened next was a chapter for the book. Double Life, recorded Paddy, I'm playing at the Orkney Blues Festival in September. Paddy, I'm desperate to come back to Texas, my friend. I would absolutely be delighted to come back to Texas. And guess what? You're going to be the bass player. You're going to be the bass player. Okay? And we'll get a drummer in. What about, who was the guy? I did a gig up in, what was it called? It was a blues club, Paddy, and you may remember. Oh, hang on a second. I'm sorry, Paddy. I'm confusing you with the Dallas bass player. Unless, excuse me. But we did a gig on the top floor of. We did a gig on the top floor of a hotel in Dallas, and it was great fun. And there was a fella that was what was the drummer's name? He'd won a competition. And he was a great drummer. He was a great drummer. And of course, Pete Thompson's a great drummer, but I think Pete's kind of retired from playing live. But all of these things I want to do, but hey, you know, this is what I'm trying to put together. There is a master plan. So anyway, Double Life, recorded at the Steakhouse, North Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. And there is a very, very light side to this album, and there's a very dark side to this album. And I'm going to focus on the light. Chris Gibson, who was with you in Orkney, that's right, great guy, big fella. and he was wearing a kilt, if I'm not mistaken. And the drummer. So this album was Richie Morales from the Brecker Brothers and Aldo Meola playing drums. Terry Evans from Ry Cooder's band singing. Sweet Pea Atkinson from Was Not Was singing. Bernard Fowler from the Rolling Stones singing. Who else was on it? We recorded it in Steve Lukather's studio in North Hollywood, and we recorded it in Steve Lukather's studio in North Hollywood, and we had a great time. But again, there was this, music business wannabe, failed musician wanting to get into the music business, and managed to convince the backer to start a label and just flushed fortunes down the toilet. Clueless idiot, and bought himself a Parker when he opened the label. Like when you open a label, you got to get a Parker. What an idiot! But that's a great album. I'm proud of the music on that. A lot of people said that it was a departure from, and it doesn't sound much like what I'd done in the past. But that's all right. I mean, it's different. It doesn't take away from anything. It's a change, and we co-produced that with John Wooler, who produced Still Got the Blues for Gary Moore, and he produced. John Wooler produced, he produced a couple of albums with Gary Moore. Still Got the Blues. He produced 3 Johnny Winter albums. He produced an Albert Collins album. He produced some amazing stuff, and he produced some stuff for a band called. I can't even remember what the name of the band was. Yeah, that it's I've got no problems listening to that album. Water Under the Bridge, it's a shame. I mean, nowadays, kind of people in the music business haven't got the power that they had. It's very much an artist-led thing. But if you want to hear somebody tell the story about handing over control to the wrong person, I could write a book on it. And maybe one day I will write a book, Keep on rocking in the free world, yes I will. So, that was that. What can you do? Yeah. So when that all went down the Swanee, I got out of that because I couldn't stand to see the lies and the cheating that was going on, and the guy who was funding it really did not deserve it, what was being done to him, so I got out, and I put this thing together called All Clear, which was kind of it was an album that was released on the internet. We've only got 2 more to go after this, by the way. Chris Gibson's a great bass player. Together with Kick-Ass. I was sending. Yes, please do. The drummer who got up and played with another band, I think it was Jumo or something like that. Phenomenal player. Anyway, so I did this album All Clear, which was only available on the internet. Still is only available on the internet, and it was kind of a few things that were lying around that I'd finished, and some soundtracks and so on, and there's Charlie, the omnipresent Charlie Rose. The next album, another album that has not yet been pressed, onto CD, although it's finished, it's mixed, it's mastered, and we have the artwork. Looking for funding. Yeah, that's got Jim Drummond plays drums on that album. Kenny Hutchison plays bass. I play a bit of bass on it myself. And we have the incredible John Rabbit Bundrick playing Hammond organ. If you want to know who Robert Bundrick's played for, look him up. on the internet, and I can tell you 3 or 4 names off the top of my head. He was with The Who for 30 years. He was with Bob Marley and the Wailers. He was with Free. He was with Paul Kossoff. And he is an absolutely unbelievably creative Hammond organ and grand piano guy, and synth. Plays synth Moog stuff, you know. And we were kind of communicating because he's an IK multimedia artist, and IK sent him software, and IK sent me software, and I'd done these demos, and Rab had seen my stuff, and the guy at IK put us together, and I said, I'll tell you, you know, I would love you to play organ or keyboards on me stuff. So you go and look at like The Who playing Tommy live in LA. Rab's playing organ and piano and that on that, and I sent him the tracks. And one of the things I'll say about Rab, and this is not to take away from Jim or Kenny or anybody else's performances on any of this stuff, because the reason they're on the album is because I have absolute confidence in them. But the thing with Rab is he came up with stuff that I would have never thought of. You know, hey Rab, play this. It wouldn't have occurred to us. He was sending me stuff back to put into the tracks that I would have never thought of in a million years. And it made an incredible difference to the songs. Have a listen to the song Light, the title track of this album. It's on SoundCloud at the moment. You listen to the piano that he put on that, on the choruses. Spectacular. And then, what have we got? There is one other album. There is one other album which is also finished and ready to go to press, although we don't have any artwork for it yet, and it's called Coherence. And that was recorded in Switzerland with Jim Drummond and a phenomenally good bass player called George Panos from Long Island, New York. And so that makes like what, 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 16 albums, 17 albums if you include the unreleased one. So, you know, 3 of them have not yet been pressed. The rest have been pressed, and there's a load of stuff on YouTube. So that's basically it, ladies and gentlemen. That's kind of an hour, which is what I like to do, is keep my streams to an hour. I hope that's been interesting for you. I hope you're still listening, and I hope you're sharing, and I hope you're still going to come back and see more. Live performance this Saturday. Sunday has to be moved because I'm playing at the Sound Neil. Hello there, Neil. I'm playing at the Congleton Festival on Sunday, and so it's impossible to stream on Sunday. But the live performance stream, the guitar stream, will happen here on Saturday. I think that's kind of it. A lot of decent music created. Well, I hope so, because I've put my name to it. Still listening, Barry. Great, man. Great. Barney. It's me sight me eye. I can't see the writing. So that's it. I don't think I've got anything more to say. I can leave you with a bit of rock and roll. Let's have a look now. Let's see what we've got here. Let's see if we can... I'm going to leave you with a bit of blues. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's more tales to tell. There's more backstories in these albums that I could tell you, which I don't want to... I could take up so much time if I told you all of the backstories, and also I could be carted off by the police if some of the backstories got out there. You know, every celebrity writes a book and bigs themselves up about, you know, like the lives that they've had, and maybe it's interesting to some people. I will say hi to Vince Paddy, definitely. But when I've talked about some of this stuff, you know, there's a few people have said I should put it all in a book, you know, stuff that I was up to with drinking and whatnot, and running around with lunatics, and in the midst of it having this musical thing, and being down in southeast London, and being homeless and walking the streets and sleeping in pubs, sleeping in the back rooms of pubs with nowhere to go, with no money and no food. and to like getting a flat on Abbey Road and stopping drinking and rebuilding a new life and making all of this music, you know. And I'm not ashamed to say that. It's all in the past, you know. It would make an interesting read. Well, you know, this maybe if I'm still here in 10, 15 years, I wouldn't want to write a book and then have a load of other stuff happen and then have, you know, I want to make sure that I get as much in it as possible. But this music on all of these albums is extremely sincere, and I work very hard to make. I don't want to let anything go. I don't let anything go until I'm absolutely satisfied that I've done the best with what I've got. And with hindsight, you can look back on things and you can think that wasn't quite so as good as I thought. But at the time, I believed in it, and I still believe in it. I don't want anything taken away or removed from the marketplace because I think it's not good enough or I don't like it. At the time, I believed in it, and it's like a diary. It's like a musical diary, and I can tell you where I was. I was in Kentish Town. I was in Camden. I was living on Abbey Road. I was living in Newcastle. I was living in you know, all over the place. Stuff recorded in Germany, stuff recorded in Ireland, stuff recorded in Glasgow, stuff recorded in New York, stuff recorded in Baltimore. I mean, stuff up, you know. Anyway, enough. Thanks everybody for watching. I think I'm going to press the good night button. We're going to press the fade to black button. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for taking part. Nice to hear from you all. And I'm going to play a bit of a blues here, ladies and gentlemen, and at which point I will switch my microphone off and switch the lights off, and you won't see me again, and I'll leave you with the blues to play out. Okay, thanks very much everybody. I'll read all your comments and hopefully we've got some good views. Saturday night, 7 o'clock, live performance, Paul Rose with the guitar, sitting here. See you then. Cheers, bye.
Bye.